Alright, y'all. Today we're going to get into a request that was in the Discord about when it is best to transition ant types and how to make that decision. So let's get right into it. Alright guys, so like I said in the intro, today we're going to be discussing when it's a good idea to be able to switch troop types and what you should focus on. And we're also going to go back to some of the basics as well. Before we get into that, got to get into the usual shenanigans. This video is sponsored by Aptoid. We're using my new code, EGNE4. You can get anywhere from 5 to 65% off all in-game purchases. A full description of how to do so will be down in the description below, as well as a link to the Discord and other things. We have a great community on Discord, one where you can actually go and talk and disagree without getting muted. Also, you can get help on how to access the app tool yourself and help on your in-game things. So all that will be down in the description down below. And again, that is EGNE4 for Aptoids. On top of that, it would really help me out if you guys hit that subscribe button, that like button, and leave a comment. It always helps us content creators out. There's still a large portion of you guys that are not subscribed that watch my content on a weekly basis. So it would really help me out if you could just hit that like, hit that subscribe, and stay tuned for more content. All right, so we'll get right into it. So it was asked of me by somebody that's in our Discord, when is the best time to start focusing on a different troop type? How do you know, and when is it a bad idea, etc., etc. So we'll get into that. So when you're going through and you're first starting, obviously you want to pick a troop type to start with. My general rule of thumb, what I tell people is that with shooters, if you're going to be free to play, shooters are going to be your best way to go. They are the most friendly when it comes to not having to pay as much. They also are the best when it comes to PvE, as far as Groundhog, etc. So if you want to be free to play, definitely go with shooters. Guardians are kind of like the next step, but they do take a little bit of spending. So unless you're planning on spending some, Guardians are not really a great idea. There is some Guardian free to play ways of going, which I've discussed before, but it's not optimal. Carriers, they are flat out, you have to spend to even use them. So I wouldn't suggest going carriers at all unless you plan on dropping a sizable amount of money. So when do you know when to be able to transition into another troop type? So for me, a Guardian shooter, I run a Guardian shooter even currently. Guardians and shooters pair up amazingly. So what I personally did is I went and I finished out my shooter T10, and then I actually went and did my Guardians after that. I actually had shooter T10 before I even had T9 Guardians, but that was before the game progressed to where Guardians were actually usable. So I've been since then transitioned over to using a Guardian shooter. So how do you know when to transition? When is a good time? You always want to stick to whatever your core troop type is. So for me, it was shooters. So I stuck through and got my shooters done, and then I went ahead and transitioned over. Now, if you plan on doing a Guardian shooter from the beginning, then you probably want to do that very quickly and kind of keep them kind of comparable. The one thing I'd say is that before you go and get your Guardian T10, because T10 does take forever. Because if you're running a Guardian shooter, because your shooters are your DPS ants, I definitely would suggest focusing and getting those to T10 before going into the Guardian tree. Now, if you're a carrier main, to be honest, you really shouldn't focus on any other troop type until you have that done. Same if you are a Guardian main, you really shouldn't focus on any other troop type until you have that done. The one advantage from going with shooters is being able to have the guardian shooter combo, and that's where it changes a little bit. But you still want to pretty much hyper focus on one thing. Now, when it comes to things like your mutations and your evos and stuff, as far as that, you're always going to focus on what your main troop type is anyway. So there's really not ever a bad time per se to transition as far as that, because you're going to eventually get bottlenecked into where you're kind of stuck doing it or not doing it. Anyway, when it comes to the mutations, because it'll come to where you have to have everything at a certain level before it allows you to evolve, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's not nearly as much of a concern. It comes down to your preference. It comes down to what you're trying to play as a troop type and what ants you have and what you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying just to get higher scores, like on PvE, like the Penguin, etc., that's all your personal preference. For me, I personally like to stick to PvP and being able to do the best I absolutely can from PvP over PvE. I don't really care about PvE nearly as much. So again, that comes up to your own personal preference as far as that. As far as like for free to play, like a good time to transfer, like I said, unless you are a guardian shooter, there's no good time. Keep hyper focusing on the one troop type that you started with and what you're focused on. Anyways, kind of a short video today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it helped. And we'll see you in the next one. Eggney out.